Welcome to the Dear NICU Mama podcast. This podcast is a safe place to connect with other NICU moms by listening to interviews with trauma-informed medical and maternal mental health experts, remarkable stories from the NICU, and intentional roundtable conversations.
Our hope is that you feel like you're sitting across the table from another NICU sister and feel seen and validated in your experience. No matter where you are on your healing journey, this podcast is here to remind you that you are not alone. Welcome to the sisterhood.
Hello, beautiful mamas. Welcome back after spring break. If you don't follow Aisha on social media, you are missing out because the sweetest photos of Aisha and her family and Ava's great grandma were so beautiful. Aisha, how was your spring break?
It was awesome. It was so sweet to have Ava be with her grandma and her great grandma on this trip, and got to see her grandpa play guitar on stage, and it was a really fun trip. But how are you, and how was your week?
It's one of those weeks where all of us parents just hanging on for dear life during cold and flu season are just waiting for signs of spring. Silas, my son, had double pink eye, an ear infection, croup, and then some sort of lingering cough, and we're past the worst of it now, knock on wood, but it's been a week, you know. But it's funny because I didn't know that there was a correlation between ear infections and pink eye. Literally never heard of that before. And the doctor was like, oh yeah, I see that a few times a day. I was like, what? Never heard of that. So anyways, at least we weren't alone. So we got the antibiotics and the eye drops, and you know how it is, giving eye drops to a toddler.
Yeah, oh man. Well, I'm glad you guys are on the other side of it.
Me too. But I'm excited to be here for this episode. It's so fun to be back.
Yes, I missed you.
So I love it. I know, likewise. And we have some beautiful guests with us here today
We do.
that I'm super excited to chat with. Do you want to introduce them?
Yes, we have two amazing women and NICU mamas who are also lucky for the Dear NICU Mama community, part of the leadership of Dear NICU Mama. We have Lindsay, who we've heard before. We've heard her story, which if you haven't yet, we'll link her episode on the description. She shared her story, but Lindsay is an amazing writer, and she writes for the editorial team. And I mean, there is never a dry eye in the room when she writes. And we also have our amazing graphic artist, Kristen, and she also just started co-hosting a coffee chats for Dear NICU Mama, and those are going to be posted on our private Facebook. So if you ever want to join, look out for those on the private Facebook group. But we are so excited to be talking with these two amazing women who have been just such a joy to be kind of in community with, and just learning from them and their stories.
Well, like Aisha said, these two gals are so near and dear to our hearts, and it's just so fun to do these roundtables because we get to hear just different intimate details of our motherhood journeys. And recently, it was C-section Awareness Week, or is it month, actually? Maybe it's the whole month.
It's a month.
Okay, I take that back. It's a whole month because C-sections are crazy. But the whole month of April is C-section Awareness Month, and if you follow us on Instagram, you've maybe seen us post a little bit about it. But we wanted to do a roundtable to talk about C-sections because, one, every C-section is a little bit different. Two, sometimes you go into it fully anticipating a C-section, and other times it's a complete and total surprise. And there can sometimes be a level of grief that comes with a C-section, especially if it wasn't planned. And so we're going to have some really great discussion today. And I just know that this episode is going to be just really affirmative and healing, because anytime that you can hear a little bit of your story in someone else's, it just affirms that you're not alone. And so I'm going to give you, Lindsay and Kristen and Aisha, just a little bit of a gratitude ahead of time, because I just know that this episode is going to be so wonderful. And so I did, okay, it's like classic Ashley, but I wanted to put Lindsay on the spot for a hot second, because if you've recently seen one of the posts we posted, and my Instagram is telling me we posted it 7 days ago, she wrote a post with the title, Your Scar Tells the Story of Love. And if you haven't read that, we'll take it in the description. But there's a line in it that I want to read out loud because I think it's really going to set the tone for this episode. And it says, "Your scar is not a villain to be defeated or shame to be locked away. It is not a scar of failure to be hidden. It is a story written upon your flesh. A story of a life saved and a story of selfless devotion. A story of a battle-tested survivor who deserves compassion and is capable of healing. Your scar tells the story of love and is a testament to the power of the woman who bears it. Your scar is your love made physical."
Wow.
And if, I don't know,
Oh,
like,
man.
if anything could set the tone for this episode better than that. But that is how we want to start this off, is to really just affirm that your C-section scar is your love made physical. And so I also want to preface, it's important to note that no matter where you are on your healing journey of accepting your C-section scar, I know for me and we'll get into this, but I could barely, it terrified me to like rub a finger on it because it was so tender, not only because it physically hurt, but because of just what it represented at the time. And so know too that this episode is for you, even if you're not to the point where you fully accepted it and maybe fully embraced it. This episode is for you no matter what part of your healing journey you're on. It's going to be a very gentle conversation, but know that you can pause, you can fast forward, and you can even fully stop listening if it's too much. So listen to your heart, listen to your body, and listen to how it's feeling throughout the episode, but we're going to keep it really gentle. So, Aisha, do you want to kick us off with our first set of questions?
Yes, of course. I was wondering if Lindsay and Kristen, you guys could briefly share a little bit of your pregnancy and if you were considered a high-risk pregnancy, and if C-sections were a conversation that you had at any point throughout your pregnancy.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm Lindsay, and my pregnancy was absolutely not high risk. C-section was not on the radar. In fact, my husband and I took the Bradley method natural childbirth classes. I was going to be a mermaid goddess of just pure water birth, natural all the way, monks humming, butterflies. It was going to be magic. And so that was not on our radar at all. It actually, in our Bradley method class, they had us, again, just crunchy granola. They had us write out what our fears were. And mine was like, I don't want to have a C-section. I don't want to miss out on this experience. And so the universe is the universe is creative in its interpretations of things.
Oh my goodness. I forget that about you, Lindsay. But your hair would absolutely fit the mermaid.
Absolutely.
Birth. I'm like, I can picture this for you.
Oh, when I was pregnant, it was curly and it was just full, and I was just living my best life. It was.
And how about you, Kristen?
Yeah, so I'm Kristen, and I thought I was having a relatively normal pregnancy up until around 20 weeks. I think up until that point, people really were just kind of like, you're so small, like you're not really showing, like, and I just didn't think anything of it because I didn't have anything to compare it to. And around 20 weeks, I had my, stand with the MFMs, and that's when things the red flags started to go up for us. And that's when the weekly appointments, the regular ultrasounds, and that kind of stuff started. But I will say, like, our care team, I never was worried. They never used the terms high risk. They just constantly said they wanted to keep an eye on baby. And in my mind, I was like, you know what? Like, they're the medical professionals. They want to keep an eye on baby. I get to see her more. Cool. They don't seem alarmed. I don't seem alarmed. And that's kind of how I took the pregnancy for the next 5 weeks after that was, I'll go as much as they want, but if they don't seem alarmed, I'm not alarmed.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and you, Aisha, I would love to hear too, your experience and if you were if C-section was on the table, considering your first delivering things.
Yes. Yeah. So with my first pregnancy, I was not high risk, and there was no talk about, my plan was also to deliver naturally, and I was excited for it. It was the one thing that I was like, I'm not even scared about labor. I'm going to kill it. It's going to be like my time to shine. And until I went into labor at 24 weeks and Enzo was breached. So they had to do a cesarean, an emergency C-section. And because he was so small, they had to do a classical T. And so as they're prepping me in the OR, the doctor is telling me, we have to do this procedure. And because of it, any subsequent pregnancies, you will have to deliver via C-section as well. So it was kind of like, are you giving us the green light to continue with this procedure? Because this is what that means. And of course, you at that moment is whatever you need to do it. And so yes, once I was pregnant with Ava, I knew from the very beginning that I was going to require a C-section at time of delivery.
Yeah, we were in the same boat. We didn't talk C-sections at all until, it came to the point of even being faced with delivery. But I remember our nurse drawing, a diagram on the board and just explaining to me as I'm there on MAG, dealing with all of these emotions. And she's explaining to me just like the impact of this C-section and being like, this is going to affect you, not just for this, but like for the rest of your life and for every child subsequent from here. And that was just a whole other layer to process. Was just, this now isn't just a one-time thing. This is something that's going to stay with me for and my husband for the rest of my life.
Yep.
So wait, did you both have classical C-sections? I did too.
Yeah.
We're just a team of classical C-sections.
I see. I didn't.
Did you look at that?
I didn't have a classical. So my face the whole time has been like, because the recovery, from what Martha has told me about recovery, it's like unbelievable.
I would love to, I know we've talked about this, but I would love to talk to an OB about it, because I don't even know how that happened. Like, because I don't have a scar up my belly or abdomen.
No.
It's just the line too. But I'm like, how do you do the undercut?
Wait, so you guys don't have a line up?
No.
See, I have one all the way up to my belly button.
Oh my goodness. No.
Really?
I only have the one.
We got to have a C-section show and tell and compare our scars and be like, okay, what do you have?
It just goes to show how different
every
single one of them is.
Yeah.
Well, and for mine, it was like, I remember minutes before he was delivered, I was like this close to having a vaginal delivery. And then all of a sudden everything changed. But it was like from right before, I was like, I didn't even know you could, I don't know. The concept of like birthing him vaginally that little was also terrifying, because I was just like, they tell you about how paper like their skin is. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? And so it's just, yeah, like you guys said, you have literally moments to sign yes on a paper and be like, or nod your head if you it's like, okay, yeah, sure, that sounds great, whatever for baby.
Yep.
But it's just a whirlwind in that moment when you're finally getting the procedure.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know from each of you what you guys knew about C-sections prior to your baby's delivery, because I'll be transparent, I knew about like Grey's Anatomy C-section. I honestly didn't have close friends that had one. Everybody had the traditional birth with the golden hour, so C-sections were absolutely not on my radar. So I'd love to know from you guys what you knew about C-sections prior to your child's delivery.
So for me, prior to having Isla, I feel like I had like a pretty decent understanding of C-sections, just because I'm the youngest on one side of my family. So a lot of my cousins have had kids. We've had a lot of different kinds of labors and births. My sister is a medical professional, so I also avid Grey's Anatomy fan. So, feel like I have, pretty decent exposure to C-sections. And I think the thing for me that helped me the most was knowing even before my own experience, was that there are different kinds of C-sections and that C-sections come from different things. I think that really helped me through my process, was just kind of knowing from the beginning that like this is something that like mothers go through. This isn't just, I'm not on an island here, and if I am, I've got a tribe with me.
That's great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it was my mother with my youngest sister had a C-section. But that was about all the experience that I had with it. So it was definitely something I wish, looking back now, that I would have looked into more and learned more about, just because I think in my mind, I'm somebody who likes to have a plan and expects that plan to go. And so in my head, it's like, I've got my birth plan. It's 6 pages long. We're good. As long as A, B, and C happen, I don't need to worry about anything else, because all these contingencies are mapped.
Yeah.
So I think that was, any time that I talk to somebody who is pregnant, I always say, like, hey, it doesn't hurt to ask the questions. It doesn't hurt to talk to your OB in one of these appointments before you're even close to delivery and say, you know, if something happens, or what does a C-section look like at this hospital? Like, just to get an idea. You're not jinxing anything. It's just, it's nice when you're not in the moment to not have to be trying to process all of it at once.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and for me, I grew up in the Dominican Republic, where C-sections were more common. I knew a lot of women who had delivered that way, but I also kind of grew up with it being kind of like a taboo, where you don't want, like, that's where in my story the shame of it comes in, is where, because I had grown up with that perception of like, oh no, you don't want to have a C-section, like that's the easy way out, quote unquote, or all those things that are unfortunate and you do hear. So I think for me that was a big part of like having to kind of reframe the narrative of what a cesarean is, because of how I had consumed it, like just in media or culture and etc.
Right. I think what I knew about C-sections before really infused this narrative in my mind that a vaginal delivery was something that you did, and a C-section was something that you had done to you. And so I never associated a C-section with giving birth. I assumed that like someone else basically took over your body, right? And so like I just always assumed like, well, I want to have a vaginal birth because then I'm the one giving birth. As if your body is still the one doing the work, right? But like it always just, for me, I had to really reframe what giving birth meant in my mind, and really like affirm myself that C-section births are still you giving birth.
Yeah.
It's not just like, but it took me a while to get there. But that's just kind of what I had those in like 2 very different camps. Either you gave birth vaginally or you had birth done to you by a medical professional. And I never really saw C-sections as giving birth until a lot longer into my healing journey. But when it was time for your babies to be delivered, I know we kind of touched on it just like a tiny bit in the beginning, but was there a conversation, beforehand that, okay, like C-sections are on the table? And I know you guys talked about like kind of making that like game moment decision of, okay, it's happening. But, when did you guys know that, okay, C-section is my birth plan? There is no other option.
I think for me, it was when it was day 2 of me being admitted and on magnesium for help, where they kind of said, we're not going to be able to, it was interesting because it was kind of like a 1-2 punch of like, we're not going to be able to do a vaginal delivery. It's off the table completely. It's not going to happen. And then that was also when they had the classical C-section conversation, where they were like, because of how Sloan was sitting, and because I ended up discovering that I had fibroids too, And so they said, because you have this fibroid here, we can't do the normal kind of C-section. And so it's weird because it's one of those conversations. I think I was so kind of like overwhelmed and then also on so much medication that it's just like a conversation that, hearing you, Ashley, say that a C-section is something that's done to you, it did kind of feel that way, where it was like, I'm being talked to about this plan. I'm not in a position to be able to like give feedback on the plan. And I don't know, it was a very odd experience because my husband was also in the room, and the doctors kept kind of talking to him and then looking at me, and like talking to him and then looking at me. It was almost like they perceived that I was not in a place to have the conversation. And so that was another piece that like I remember sitting there and being like, they're talking over me right now, but like I'm not part of the conversation, which I think ended up being a very strange and something that I had to deal with after the fact, of just not having that control, and especially it being so opposite of what I was mentally preparing for 6 months. Then it's like, oh, all these people are making choices for me now, and like I can't even participate in the conversation.
So painful. I'm so sorry.
So when it was our delivery day, what ended up happening with us is it's very hazy. So I actually went back, I asked my mom and I asked my husband, who were both there. I asked them what happened. So basically when everything was going on, they actually started me on Pitocin. The OB team at the hospital was fully planning for me to do a vaginal delivery. I think things were just very touch and go. And they were like, we need to do what's best for mom. And then the beautiful, radiant NICU doctor came walking in, the neonatologist, and she said, turn that stuff off. We're doing a C-section. We handle babies like this all the time. And it turns out my mom walked out into the hallway and she said something. She was like, they started the Pitocin, and the neonatologist came like running in and basically just made the decision for us, because it was like mom and baby can both get through this. And that's when our nurse Liz was like, this is the right decision, blah, blah, blah. And my family they agreed, my husband agreed, and they actually made the decisions for me at that time, because I was not in a place to make the decisions. And again, what you just said really resonated with me, that like it's a very unusual feeling to be aware of the conversation going on about your health, but not feel like you can take an active participation in it, and to not feel like you can take that active role in your birth story. It's definitely played a huge part in my journey and processing and trying to heal the fact that a lot of these decisions were made for me and will be made for me forever now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's such a common thread. Just the feeling of helplessness, really, where you can't. There's nothing you can do, and you don't even know what you could do. So there is like you do have to kind of trust that the medical providers are making the best choices, because you don't know, and so it's this tension of I literally can't do anything about it differently, and just kind of surrendering to like, this is what is going to happen. And for me with Enzo, it was very much that too, of just like, my water had broke 5 days before, and we were just kind of waiting to see if we can keep him in as long as we could. And then on day 5, I actually was like, oh, I have to poop. And they were like, okay, it's time to get ready for the OR. And I was like, oh, what? And they gave Andy like his scrubs, and then they rolled me into the OR. And like, as you're rolling, like, you're not either, they're prepping you for surgery and telling you all this information, and giving you like the clipboards with papers to sign, and I can't even, like, my hands were useless, so I'm just like scribbling. So it's definitely one of those moments where you just feel completely, like Lindsay said, out of control. And you just, there's no way to even process that in the moment, so you're just kind of, let's see what happens. And with Ava, I was completely sedated. So when we went into the hospital because of symptoms of labor, it was like minutes between me arriving and them rolling me into the OR, and I didn't even realize that I was going to be sedated. So as I'm like rolling in, I'm like, well, I've been here before, I know what's going to happen. And then the anesthesiologist is like, okay, I'm going to count backwards to 10. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I didn't even say goodbye to Andy. So that's like a whole other part of it, is like your partners in that moment is, you don't have enough time to even have a moment with each other. And so I'm about to go under. I don't know if I'm going to wake up. I don't know what's going to happen. I will literally have no memory of this event. And so even that has been something to, like, I've had to heal and really process, is just, how do you reconcile, like, not remembering your daughter being born?
Yeah.
Were all of us under?
I wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so just me and Aisha.
You were under too. I didn't realize that much.
Yeah, so our stories are similar in that Aisha, where, you know, they had talked about vaginal delivery and then his sets. I had a placental abruption. I didn't know that until after, but that's when, like, everything kind of changed within an instant. And by the grace of God, Ryan had, like, just got, because I was flown to a different hospital, so he had to drive like about 4 hours to the hospital. And so he, like, arrived. He's in his winter coat because it was January, and he arrived. I remember him kissing me on the forehead, and I was on Meg, and it felt like so nice because your body's so hot. Like, oh, it's like ice cubes. It was kind of nice. But then went to the bathroom. All of a sudden, that bright blue emergency C-section button is pressed, and all of a sudden there's a team of 15 people wheeling me away. And I remember, like, looking back towards Ryan, and his hands are, like, on the top of his head, and his face is white. And I'm just like, again, you can't say goodbye. You're just like, okay, you know, like, I all of a sudden have no control over my body or what's happening. And like you said, I don't know if I'm going to live. Like, I don't know how serious this is, but I love you. Like, you're giving I love yous with your eyes. You're like, I need you to see me talking to you through my eyes because I can't make words right now. And I remember the OB, like, telling me in my ear, like, we're going to take good care of you, Ashley. We're going to take good care of you, Ashley. And all I could say was, what about my son's heart? What about my son's heart? What about my son's heart? Like, all I cared about in that moment was just like, his heart, his heart, his heart. And she's like, we know about the heart, Ash. We know about the heart. And I think I even asked, have you done this before? You know, you're just, like, so out of it. She's like, I've done this many times. And I was like, okay. But you're, like, going down, like, you feel like you're in a Grey's Anatomy episode. You're running down the hallway. You're on a gurney. Like, okay. And I remember, same thing, getting into the room. It's bright. And then you're counting down and you're out. And you wake up and you just realize you missed everything. You don't remember that you never heard the first cry. You didn't see their first breath. You were completely out of it. And I remember when I recapped with the OB afterwards, she's like, he had a beautiful cry when he was born. And I was like, I wish you could have, like, recorded it or something. You know? Like, to give anything to hear that, like, first moment, or just, like, have a glimpse of that. But there is, like, such a significant layer of grief when it's just like, I was there, but I wasn't. Like, I was, you know, I almost wish there was a way that our bodies could, like, take a video for us and be like, hey, while you were out, this is what happened. You know, just so, because I still have to ask Ryan sometimes, like, what happened, you know, for that, like, while I was out, and he'll, like, give me some fill in the details. But when it's that, like, emergent under surgery type, like, you're just out, it's just, And I remember too, Ryan said that because he was like white, and the nurse came over and she said, he'll be out in like literally 5 minutes. And he was like, what? And they were like, they do this so fast. Like you'll have a son like in the incubator in like 5 minutes. And he was like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah, like it's really quick. It's really quick. And so it's so wild. And so I wonder too, would Kristen and Lindsay be willing to share a little bit about the experience of like, was your C-section still emergent in the moment, even though you were like awake for that procedure? Like, what was it like to have it be emergent, but you were like fully present for it?
So it was definitely still emergent for us. I had preeclampsia and HELP, and I just remember the nurse saying, oh no, she has HELP syndrome. And I just remember thinking, that's something I really sound like I don't want to have. I remember vividly thinking, like, I don't think I want to have.
Right.
So that's when I knew things were getting really real. And I would say, honestly, probably within just minutes of hearing that, they were wheeling me down the hall, chasing cars, playing overhead. I'm like in my Grey's Anatomy montage. And it was a very tense feeling rolling into the OR. It was right at the end of the shift. So like I was being wheeled in. They switched shifts at 7 at this hospital. It was probably 6:45. And the OR team that had just finished in there was trying to shut down the OR. So I'm getting wheeled into an OR that they're trying to shut down. They had shut down the computers already. So people started yelling at each other as I'm laying there exposed. My husband's not with me. They had him wait outside. So it was like a very tense few moments. And finally, they wheeled me into OR2. And it was like very surreal being awake, because they tried their best to still give you that normal birthing experience. They still tried to pull the curtain down for us and do all of these things. And they wheeled the incubator over. And I remember the only thing I could muster was saying, like, she's so beautiful. And then I literally just passed out. Like the adrenaline, the epidural, like, I don't know, something caught up with me, but like I got sick a few times. And I just remember like passing out and my nurse saying, okay, honey, we're going to switch now. I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh.
And I woke up back in my room with my mom.
Wow.
It was a really surreal, like very fast and like very scary experience. Like it was honestly insane. And we keep bringing up Grey's Anatomy, but it's because it's the only medical show that like really compares to like what it actually really does feel like, that when you're laying there and you're looking at these lights and you're fully exposed to strangers and there's things moving and you hear the tools. It's really just an experience like no other.
Well, and I want to really quick just note on something of just how remarkable mothers are, like yourself, that like your body knew as soon as you saw your daughter, like, okay, I'm done, you know, like, but your body fought until the very last second. Like, I hope you're incredibly proud of that. And I think like the fact that your body could like, okay, I did my part. Now, like, you know, you had to give them the hands to do that. Like, that was really, really difficult. But you saw her and then your body was like, I did it. You know, like I fought really hard in that moment and now I'm done. You know, like
it was like the feeling of knowing she was safe now.
Yeah.
It was like truthfully, it was just like that feeling of being like, she's with people who can take better care of her than I can right now.
Yeah.
Like that, and just like fully surrendering to like the fact that like this is our story and like this is the path that we're on and like these are the people who are going to help us get there and like I need to trust.
Yes.
And I think that was that moment where my brain was like, Kristen, you did it. Now rest. Now rest.
Yeah.
You get ready to pump.
The moment you wake up.
Because the second you wake up, they're strapping that bad boy on.
Oh my
Literally
gosh.
the moment. Yeah.
That's, I don't know. It's interesting to hear your all's kind of more emergent thing, because we were in this constant holding pattern of not knowing when it was going to happen. My doctor I was at 29 weeks. And so my doctor was determined to get to 30 is kind of what she kept saying. She's like, we're going to get to 30 weeks. It's going to happen. And then we're going to get to 32. And then we're going to get to 34. And like, that was kind of her mantra. And so it was odd because we would have these moments of like extreme like adrenaline where they'd come rushing in and it was like 5 people, 2 people I'd never seen before, and it was like, okay, it's go time, it's happening. And then they'd look at my monitors and be like, well, and walk out.
Oh gosh.
And then it would happen at like 2:00 in the morning. It would happen at 4 in the morning. It didn't seem to matter. And so we were constantly in this kind of like hurry up and wait kind of thing. And so it got to the point where when it was actually time, when they said, okay, we're wheeling you down, we're going to make it happen, that I was joking with the anesthesiologist because half of me was like, this isn't going to happen. Like they're going to come in and be like, oh, April Fools, never mind, we're going back up. And so it wasn't until I was actually on the table, like lying back and like I couldn't feel my feet anymore. And it was kind of that weird, like surreal moment where my husband was right by my face and like he had the whole getup on that I was like, oh my God, this is actually happening. Like we need to hit the brakes here. Like I need like some processing time because even though we've had all this time waiting, I didn't actually believe that it was going to happen. And so I think that was kind of the most surreal piece of it, was like, it was almost like I was watching it happen to myself and not fully taking it all in as it was happening. It was, I don't know, it was very interesting. And one thing that just always makes me laugh about it too, is that the things that you remember from it are so not what you would expect. So like, I remember seeing Sloan for the first time and giving her a kiss. And I remember my husband like going with the NICU team. But the only part of the actual surgery that I remember is the doctors, who were like stitching me up and doing all the final things, it was the weekend, of Mother's Day. And they were talking about their Mother's Day plans. And they were talking about crock pot recipes that they could take to a potluck. And so I was lying there and I'm like having this emotional moment, and my doctors are standing over me being like, well, you know, bolognese. I mean, that's the way to go. And like, I just was like, where am I? What is happening? And like the nurse, I think, must have noticed my face or something, because I was like, you're going to the lake? How nice. And she like leaned in, she's like, don't worry, like it means everything looks really good, because they wouldn't be talking like this if there was something wrong. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's a good feeling. But now it's so funny because every time someone mentions crock pots, I just kind of giggle and go like, I know a great spaghetti bolognese that you can make in a crock pot for Mother's Day if you like.
They talk about the funniest things. They were talking about my tattoos. I'm spread out. I'm on the table in front of them. They're just like, your tattoos are so cute. Did you get them done locally?
Oh my God.
It's like,
thank you.
I just had a profound life-changing experience.
Yep, totally fine. But like, let me tell you about this tattoo on my hip and its significant meaning. Like, it's just unbelievable. It's just, I had the same funny experience, just being like, is that really what we're going to talk about in here? Like, and it is funny the things you do and don't remember, like being in there. Like I remember kind of more about the before and after than like even the actual like during the surgery, because I think like, you know, they're pumping you full of beds, and like I think like the actual surgery happening, I had never broken a bone, I had never had stitches, so like the concept that they were performing surgery, I think my body just blocked it out. But like I have pretty vivid memories of like the before and the after until I like pass out and, you know, just kind of succumbed to the adrenaline. But rolling in, I mean, I remember them pulling the lights, and I remember yelling at the team because they were like, what's this baby's name? It's baby Sardini. And I was like, her name is Isla. It's A-I-L-A. And in big Sharpie letters on the little thing they put on her isolette from the day she was born, in big Sharpie letters, they wrote her name. So it's just really funny what your brain does and doesn't let you remember. And I like to think it's like my happy memory. Like that's my funny birth memory. Like C-section, you know?
Right.
Sure.
Oh,
That's so beautiful.
that is. But it's just so incredible, like what we are able to like endure in those moments too, and just find the comedic relief and be able to like look back and say, yeah, we went through that and that was real. Even though 50% of it is blocked from our memories, but like we did that. And that's why, going back to like your point, Ashley, in the beginning, of the perception of what a cesarean is and what it actually is, after you've been through it, like how it is something that you are actually are participating in, because you are giving your body for this delivery and sacrificing it. And it's you could not be more involved in it, because it is literally your body is being this vessel of like bringing life into the world. And so regardless of how that happens, I think that that's where I've gotten to the point of like saying, like, I hope we all can be proud of that. We were vessels of life, and we brought life into this world. And sometimes you need a little more help to do that, but there's no denying how much you are participating in it, because you are like, it is something that you are doing, like you are doing it too. Hello, mamas. We hope you have felt seen and validated in this episode so far. We had such a great time talking with Kristen and Lindsay about C-sections and our experiences, what was going through our minds, and everything before, in between, and after. So much so that we decided that this had to be a 2-part episode, because it was just so good. And there was so much valuable information that we wanted to give it the amount of time that it deserved, and we didn't want to cut anything out, and we wanted to honor each story being told. So this will be the end of part 1, and next week we will be back with part 2. So stay tuned, and we hope that you are giving yourself the time to process and take in everything that we've discussed so far. We hope that your heart is being hugged and tended to as you process your own C-section. We love you, and we can't wait to be back. See you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dear NICU Mama podcast. If you loved this episode, we'd be so grateful for a review.
For more ways to connect with the Dear NICU Mama sisterhood, check out the links in the episode description.